Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 12 o'clock here in Europe, Central European time. I would like to say good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone who's joining for this second meeting, INSOP meeting of Working Group Monitoring, where we're going to discuss issues and activities that we defined back in June this year during annual meeting on monitoring of soil pollution legal tools and instruments, what is available in different countries, and as well how we can enforce and strengthen the current and developing tools for controlling pollutants in fertilizers. These are the two major activities. Before we're going to go to agenda, I would like to quickly go through the housekeeping rules that you can see here in front of your screen. Should you at any point lose your connection, you can always rejoin this meeting by using the same link and password that you received during the registration. We all encourage you to keep your microphones muted. And in case you want to step in and have your voice heard, please raise your hand function. We'll take care of the note of the order and give you the hand afterwards. If you have any comments or questions, please make sure to use the chat function. Actually, I highly encourage you to use the chat function now to greet all of us and say from which country you're joining from to keep this session quite interactive. And in case you wish, please put your name in front of your icon so that we can easily identify and keep the records of who is speaking and making any comments. I wish all of us a very pleasant 2-hour session. We can go to the next slide now, where we're going to go through the agenda items and their endorsement. Thank you very much. So we're going to have an opening remarks by our INSOP chair in a second. After that, the leader of this session, of the monitoring working group session, will take a quick look of our priorities for this monitoring working group. Then we have our guest speaker joining from FAO Legal Division, Andres Rubio, who will talk about the FAOLEX tool that we have here at FAO and what its main function. Following that, I'm going to have my colleague, Giacomo Rocchigiani from FAO-GSP joining and talking about another FAO tool called SoiLEX, focusing mostly on soil, as you can see from the abbreviation, and what is the major objectives and purposes of having this tool here at GSP, and giving you a quick case study that one of our members already done for the activities of this group. After that, we're going to have a very interesting discussion with all of you, where I highly encourage you to step in and brief us about the existing soil pollution legal tools that you have in your country, so it will help us to understand what is currently available in what country. And then I'm going to make a brief announcement about the upcoming webinars that we're going to have next year, launched, focusing on soil pollution policies. Then we're going to move to the second objective of the working group meeting, is how we can strengthen policies and legal instruments to control soil pollutants, focusing on heavy metals in fertilizers. Again, after that, we're going to have an open discussion, and we're going to conclude with the closing remarks by our Vice Chair, Dr. Dae Ho. This session will be moderated by myself, the INSOP coordinator, and the leader of the monitoring working group, Claudia Lima de Silva. Without further ado, Professor Ravi, welcome. We are looking forward for your opening remarks. Thank you. Professor Ravi, can you please unmute your microphone?
Thank you very much, Sajas, for your excellent leadership, helping us coordinate this, and of course, all the effort that Claudia has put into towards getting this working group together as well. To all of us, the first thing to recognize is that globally, we are all challenged with the presence of pollutants. In some countries, you have low levels of pollutants. In some countries, you have extremely high levels of pollutants present, and not just in soil, water, but also in air as well. For us to be able to monitor the presence of these pollutants, for us to determine the extent and severity of pollutants, measurement and monitoring these contaminants in our ecosystem is absolutely a necessity. And then for us to assess whether those pollutants potentially pose risk, regulations become a necessity as well. In all of our countries, we do have legislation. Some countries, we probably do not have as many as we would like to. So today's workshop, so INSOP, International Network on Soil Pollution, has pulled together a number of themes. And these themes take us all the way from measurements, monitoring, regulations / legislation, risk, characterization, remediation, solvent of contamination, and of course, quality of food as well. This particular working group that we have is led by Claudia. And Claudia, thank you very much for what you have done to pull together the key activities within this working group. And I'm looking forward to all the delegates. And thank you for all of you who have joined us to contribute towards the priorities that we have. And with your input, we ought to be able to further refine the priorities and jointly will help deliver these for INSOP. So with that, Sargis, I would like us to move forward with the meeting and inviting you to go forward with the moderation of the meeting as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravi, for this opening remarks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the importance is emphasized. We need to address these issues on legal instruments in controlling, preventing, monitoring, and remediation of soil pollution as soon as possible. Claudia, further to you, and I'm going to pass this moderation to you now and brief us again for those who were here back in the summer or for all new members who are joining us. What are the priorities for this monitoring working group that we're going to focus over the next 2 years? Claudia, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to start saying welcome, everybody, and thanks for the trust you put on me to lead this group. I'm quite pleased with the work that we have been doing since I was elected the member. And here today, I'm going to share some of the insights that we came up and culminated with some actions for our working group. First of all, let's start talking about the INSOP. INSOP is our network of soil pollution, and it has 6 main areas. And the areas are on assessment, mapping, monitoring, remediation, food quality, and soil and water. So these are the 6 areas that we are going to be working with. And the goal of INSOP is to improve the knowledge concerning the pollution in soil. And it comes from assessment of the soil pollution, mapping it, monitoring, whenever possible, remediating it, assessing quality of the food that we grow in the soil that is polluted, and doing the link between soil and water, and how can these 2 compartments collaborate for pollution. Our work group, our network, is composed of our chair, which is Ravi. He just talked to you now. And then we have our vice chair, which is Dehu, and he's going to be talking to us in the end of this meeting. The coordinator, you already he already introduced himself, is Sergio's. Then you have the leaders of all of the different areas of work that are also our working groups. So you have Ellen Carasali for the assessment work group. I am with the monitoring, soil pollution monitoring. Then you have Scott and Feng working with the remediation. You have Dave O'Connor with food quality. And then we're still looking for leaders to take the responsibility for the groups of mapping and soil and water. So our INSOP network has more than 1,000 members from 130 different countries. And I say it with a lot of joy, because if you think how big is the world, the planet Earth, how many countries we have, and in this group, we managed to get 130 countries together to work towards understanding and dealing with soil pollution. So for me, this is wonderful. So some insights here. Most of our memberships, 30%, are from Asia, followed by Europe with 25%, and then Africa with 15%. Latin America is where I come from, Brazil. We're very underrepresented here, and let's see if we can change it from now on. Then we have near Northeast and North Africa, North America, Pacific, Eurasia. We still have almost double the number of females are males in our group. So let's also hope that these numbers can change. And concerning the stakeholders, we have 46% of our members pertaining to research and academia, followed by the government sector and the private sector. I'm very happy to see that we have general public and farmers here on our group, on our network. That is very motivating. So now let's focus on the monitoring work group and the priorities that we came up since I was elected, since the summer. So what is the goal for this work group? Our work group aims to better understanding the legal instruments from different countries. So for example, in this case, we have 130 countries. So the aim is to understand the legal instruments in these countries that deal with prevention, monitoring, and/or remediation of soil pollution. We have here, based on this goal, we developed 3 priorities, 3 actions. The first set of actions are concerned to SoiLEX. SoiLEX. SoiLEX is a kind of database for national soil legislation from different countries. So the idea is that together with the members of our group, we would like to analyze and identify principles for addressing soil pollution on each specific legislation for each country. Following that, prepare a policy briefing with the gaps and opportunities that we find after the analysis and of the legislation. And for the countries that still don't have any legislation concerning soil pollution, we can use our expertise to help construct, together with the nationals of these countries, a legislation that suits their purposes. The other priority is concerning the in-soil fair, where you have the concentration of high concentration of heavy metals above thresholds on fertilizers, organic fertilizer. mineral fertilizers. And the idea is actually to have the concentration of these minerals on the labels. So based on that, we would like to spread awareness of the situation and identify countries that are willing to participate on a monitoring program concerning the levels of heavy metals in these mineral fertilizers. The last action is concerned to webinars. So we are going to have a series of webinars on different topics. I have here some of the topics that we are dealing with today, but we can also add others. And I think I'll go to, and that's it. So this is what the work we have to do today. We are going to find members of this work group to develop some activities together with us concerning national legislations inside the SoiLEX database, spread awareness and work on monitoring programs concerning the concentration of heavy metals in mineral fertilizers, and work together in developing webinars on topics that are relevant for our work group. With that, and with this invitation for you to collaborate, I will finalize my presentation and I'll lead back to Sergio. Sergio, please.
That's right. Thank you very much for this informative presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard very ambitious, very important tasks to address all of us together over the next 2 years. We're going to go through all of them in details during the open discussion because I'm sure you have a lot of information to share with us to achieve those activities. Now, this is the only activities that we're focusing on monitoring working group, as you can see here. However, we still have two sessions planned over the next 2 weeks. The next one will be December 13, remediation working group, focusing on how to build a sustainable management database and the interaction between food quality and pollution, where we would like to focus on how we can reach out to farmer communities and raise awareness and concerns about how to prevent soil pollution, and as well work together with World Health Organization. That will be in December 15. If you're interested in helping us in the other activities, feel free to grab your smartphone, scan this QR code and register your email, because that's the only way how I can reach out to you with my invitation to participate in those upcoming meetings. Without further ado, now all these presentations will be are recorded, so they will be available after this meeting, and you will be available to see them online next week, hopefully, once I upload them on our webpage. And well, we're going good on time, so Claudia, please go ahead to the next slide. So Claudia already said that the meeting objectives are to understand the functional mechanisms of what we have at FAO. You heard already the term SoiLEX. We're going to go through details to explain you what SoiLEX means, but also have more important FAOLEX. And in 1 second, we're going to address you and explain what FAOLEX means here at FAO. We need, during the open discussion, to understand countries and members who are willing to contribute in analyzing national soil pollution legislations in their country, learn about those countries and what they have actually in terms of soil pollution legislation, but also whether some countries have any monitoring system on controlling the pollution of heavy metals and their concentration in fertilizer products, which is very important to address not only for us, but also for other GSP networks such as INSOP, which are also present here, and finally identify members willing to contribute to these activities. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague from FAO Legal Department in 1 second, Andres Vater Rubio, who will talk about FAOLEX. very important tool that we have here at FAO. And I'm sure if we want to achieve and build this global database on soil pollution legislations, we need to understand these two terms, FAOLEX and SoiLEX. So let's start with FAOLEX in 1 second. So Andres, good morning, good afternoon to you. Very pleased to see you here with us today. So Claudia, you can stop sharing your screen because I will share my screen with the presentation for Andres. Andres, once I'm loading your presentation,
I take the opportunity to introduce myself. Yes, thank you so much, Sergej. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, to delegates, members, participants, colleagues. It's I'm awestruck by the vibrancy and the width of your network. So many kudos to you on that. So my name is Andres Faterrubio. I am the FAOLEX coordinator in the Development Law Service of the Legal Office of FAO. I have very limited time, so I will move briskly through some of the simpler slides because I will try to explain some technical issues, and I hope I do a decent job of that, but it can get complicated. Next slide, please. Okay, so here just the role of the Development Law Service. There are three main pillars. One is advising and legislative drafting for FAO members. Another pillar is capacity development, and that there's legal information and research, which is FAOLEX, other legal databases, as well as publications, legal papers, legal briefs. Now, all of these are working and mutually reinforcing themselves, of course, because when there are projects in the field, typically you start off with legal assessments and gap analysis. That exercise will find new documents for us that we don't have in FAOLEX. So this is a way of making sure we are more updated. On the other hand, a lot of the assessments depend on the FAOLEX as a primary source to find laws and policies that are relevant. Again, FAOLEX, as it has all these laws and policies, is an important tool for capacity development in terms of finding trends, finding what countries are doing, finding good practices, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, now just to simply highlight that FAO has a strong mandate in terms of legal information. So we see in the Constitution in Article 1, one of the core functions is to assemble, analyze, monitor, and improve access to data and information in areas related to FAO's mandate. Then we see in Article 11 that, in fact, laws and regulations are explicitly mentioned as instruments that member nations and associate members should regularly communicate to the Director General, with a caveat that the Director General considers useful for the purposes of the organization. So what these two articles have translated to is that FAO has been publishing and disseminating legal information for over 70 years. We can say the legal information is really in FAO's DNA. Next slide, please. So here, just an overview of FAOLEX. It is the largest free access repository of official laws, regulations, and policies on food, agriculture, and natural resources. And official, I just want to stress official. These are state instruments. We don't have UN publications or FAO publications, research papers. These are official documents, legal and policy documents. So it has been in continuous operation since 1995. We have a collection of over 200,000 texts. We are usually able to add an additional 7,000 entries every year. We have a global coverage, so 185 countries, territories. We also do subnational jurisdictions and regional organizations. We have a dedicated team of around 12 members, and FAOLEX is one of the main sites that are visited within FAO, and we usually have around 12,000 users a day. Last but not least, open data. For us, this is very important to try to have our data as transparent and available as possible for everybody. It's public domain, of course. We're dealing with laws. This is all in the public domain. And we do not necessarily, perhaps, are the best in making the most of the data we have. So we want to push it out there and have, researchers, research groups, academics, scholars, whoever, make the most of the information, because of course it's a treasure trove of 100 years of legislation. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're getting a little bit more complicated. And again, I want to break down a little bit what it means, these 200,000 texts. So our first way of organizing it is through primary subjects. We have around 25, we have 25 primary subjects. And you will see on the left-hand side, these are listing these primary subjects. And of course, at the top, in terms of documents that are tagged with these primary subjects, you get our core areas of FAO. So food and nutrition, environment, fisheries, livestock, cultivated plants, water, wild species, and so forth. Over time, we've increased our scope because I think in part because of the trying to align ourselves with the sustainable development framework. We have not only to deal with production, environment, but also we become more, we've also increased on the social equity side. So we have more on social protection, indigenous peoples, gender, employment, youth. So we have a fairly big task for ourselves of what we are collecting. Now I put in land and soil in red, 14,700. And then if you look at the right-hand side, I'm giving a different number. I'm saying land, soil, domain, we have 19,845 documents. This is because, in fact, domain and primary subject for us are two different fields, two different facets. What it means is that typically laws will be intersectoral in nature. So there will be many laws that we would say are primarily about, say, a topic, but it will have a big impact in terms of land and soil. So a document will have potentially many domains, but we always try to find what is the primary focus of the text. So here we have land and soil, and again, it's a mixture because it's about soil, but also land. So in this domain, there's a 45% roughly is about soil, and then the other 55% is more about land tenure and land use planning, which of course there's overlaps between them. And yeah, we'll see. This is a recurring theme in this presentation. Below domains, we also have keywords, and I've just listed here some of the keywords that are closest to soil. So we have desertification, erosion, fertilizers, soil conservation, soil rehabilitation, soil pollution, protection, forest, erosion, water shortage. And you see we have quite a lot of documents that are tagged with these keywords. So soil conservation in green, we have around 4,000 documents. In soil pollution and quality, we have another 3,000 and more. Now, again, you should realize that these are not necessarily separate documents. It might well be that the documents have many of these keywords together. Let's move on to the next slide, and I hope to explain a little bit better what this subject matter metadata is for FAOLEX. And maybe again, we have three pillars: the primary subjects, the domains that have the same values as primary subjects, but they're only the core primary subjects that are closest to FAO mandate. And then we have keywords. Maybe with giving an example, this makes a little bit more sense. So imagine that we get a new environmental law that we have to enter into FAOLEX. So we will say that this is the primary subject is environment. But typically, these laws will discuss about environment, possibly wildlife, soil, and water. So in domains, we put all the other, let's say, subjects that are relevant to the law. And each of these domains then allow us to include keywords for the separate domains. And we have a catalog of around 400 keywords to use. So it's quite intricate, but in fact, it doesn't fit. It's not fit for purpose, in my opinion, because it is not always easy to get at documents of a particular regulatory area without getting a lot of other documents that are noise. It's not what you want. The problem with FAOLEX is too much information in a way. And so people get too much for what they need, and they might use a lot of time trying to sift through irrelevant documents. So what we're bringing in and we're working on now is bringing a new facet, and it's called main keywords. And these 90 keywords are they're more relevant for regulatory areas. So each subject is a very general term, and they will have different regulatory areas. If we take, for example, the subject of cultivated plants, in there are several different regulatory areas, disciplines, if you would like to call them that. So you have pesticides legislation, you have fertilizer legislation, you have seeds legislation, and so forth. So these main keywords will bring a specificity that is not available now. Unfortunately, my slide is too large, so you can't see the bottom. But there are two arrows. So on the right-hand side, it would be specific. Your search becomes more specific. On the left-hand side, it becomes more comprehensive. You will need, I think, users that are doing a very detailed analysis will need to move through the spectrum. Sometimes they want to go to the specific, but they will have to move also to the comprehensive side. Next slide, please. Okay, so too much information. Perhaps I think a better way for us to be able to manage this information is to have thematic databases. And this is what we've done within using FAOLEX as a repository of data for these different thematic databases. So we have several already launched. We have, for example, AMR-LEX on antimicrobial resistance, AQUA-LEX on water. We have an agroecology data set. We have family farming, gender, port-state measures, and IUU fishing, SoiLEX, of course, small-scale fisheries, the right to food, and we have one on timber legality, TimberLEX. Next slide, please. Okay, so what exactly do these thematic databases do better than FAOLEX? One, for example, is relevance. You only bring to the thematic databases documents of relevance. So by definition, you are eliminating a lot of noise from your data. Two, you bring a greater conceptual focus. What are the legal elements? What are the technical elements? What are the policies that come out from the science and policy nexus? That is obviously not found in FAOLEX. This conceptual focus will then enrich your analysis because you're browsing, you're analyzing your text through this lens of the conceptual focus. And fourth is it allows for more user-friendly interface. You can add more communications that are geared towards your theme and so forth. Next slide, please. Okay, and here I'm just taking a publication on African soil production law, and just an excerpt from one of the 500 or more pages of the publication. And it seems what is listed here as relevant for soil protection law. And the list is very diverse. You see here, the Constitution is important. Environmental Act is important. Forest, water, climate change, land, agriculture, food, crops, irrigation, and so forth, mining. This looks like FAOLEX. It looks like pretty much 50% of FAOLEX are relevant for these types of documents. So again, what is important, I hope what I've showed today, is that in the FAOLEX, we're trying to find ways to be able to filter through all this information and just provide relevance in a proper way and manage that. Next slide. Okay, so this is the final slide. And basically, we have this collaboration between FAOLEX and SoiLEX. So the texts that are analyzed in SoiLEX are found in the FAOLEX repository. So there are links to FAOLEX. FAOLEX is used as one of the resources to discover instruments that are not currently SoiLEX. And conversely, the work that is done by you and colleagues in the Global Soil Partnership brings us documents that we are not aware of. So this is there are synergies going on between the two. And I just here I discuss about I call these pointers because I don't want to call them recommendations, or this is not a critique of SoiLEX, but perhaps there's ways to unleash the full power of SoiLEX. There are things that perhaps can be done more. Now, I always think that it's better to do one thing well than to try to do too much and do them poorly. And sometimes ambitious initiatives start very well, but are hard to sustain. So again, I'm not suggesting here that this is the way forward, but are just possibilities to consider. One, again, is scope, because as I think also has been shown in the previous speakers' discussions, there's a very strong focus on soil-specific legislation, and that makes total sense. But we've seen that the soil has many intersectoral links to other sectors. And it is FAOLEX, I think, would be able to provide this additional information from other sectors in a way that would be useful. And this, I mean, also by doing it in an automated fashion. All these thematic databases are very, very labor intensive. It requires a lot of analytical resources. But this part of providing a full collection of relevant legislation, I think this can be done in an automated fashion without too many resources. The next item would be advanced search. In FAOLEX, we use Google search. So the search is not limited to the metadata that we add to the documents, but all the content of the text are indexed and accessible. So advanced search allows users, to also look through their own parameters, their own search terms, and not be limited to the classifications that we provide. I see in the agenda item there are a lot of discussion about policies. I am not sure that policies are currently in SoiLEX. Again, we have a very strong collection of policies, and this could also be incorporated into SoiLEX, I think, without too many problems. Again, my slide is I guess I use too much space. There's another item, and it's about leveraging artificial intelligence. Until last year, I thought, the dream of having these thematic databases being completely, not completely, but highly updated, a lot of analytical content, to be almost unrealistic, because they involved a lot of resources to keep, really completely updated. Now I'm not so sure, because AI has done incredible progress, and SoiLEX, I mean, it's a wonderful thematic database and has conceptual focus. It's user-friendly, and it already possesses a great amount of information that could be used as a training tool for machine learning. And then perhaps, or hopefully, a lot of the analytical content that now has to be done manually could be done through AI. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thank you again for your attention, and thank you very much for having me here. here are some links and emails where you can find us. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Andres. Thank you very much for this informative presentation and giving us the opportunity to learn about FAOLEX. I'm sure not many users and participants here were familiar in that respect with FAOLEX, but you shed a lot of light today. So, and please make sure that all of us here, I see we have 75 participants, we will try our best to improve FAOLEX with soil pollution aspects. So thank you for that. Now, we've heard and learned a lot about SoiLEX, but we've heard that, FAOLEX, but now it's time to learn about SoiLEX, which is one of the components of FAOLEX. And with that, I'm very pleased to invite my colleague, Giacomo, who will brief us about SoiLEX tool. Now, if you have any questions specifically related to FAOLEX, please feel free to post those questions in the QA box. Andres will be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can address them during the open discussion, which will follow shortly after Giacomo's presentation. Giacomo, good afternoon. Please feel free to share your screen and your presentation about SoiLEX.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Can see us.
Thank you, Serge. Thank you for this nice introduction. And I wanted also to thank all the INSOP working group and also Andres for his very valuable insights, how to improve SoiLEX. And so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all our dear participants. My name is Giacomo Roccheggiani, and I work for the FAO Land and Water Division, and I'm also part of the Global Soil Partnership Secretariat. And in today's presentation, I will tell you about SoiLEX, how this database works, and how we could improve this incredible research and information exchange tool with your kind and valuable contribution. So, SoiLEX is a global database that aims to facilitate access to information on existing legal instruments, mainly on protection and prevention of soil degradation. And in this way, raise awareness on such a pivotal topic. The platform was created in coordination with FAOLEX, which is to date one of the largest database of legal frameworks and instruments related to natural resources management, food, and agriculture. The legal and policy instruments, we have policy instrument also in SoiLEX, to answer to Andres, can be searched by country profile or by soil-related keywords. As you can see from the left side of the slide, this is the research by country profile, and on the right side, the research by soil-related keywords. So this is what the web page will look like. So the database allows the users also to have the complete document for the ones who are more familiar with legal documents, as well as detailed summary of the content for the ones who are not very into legal policies, legal and policies document. And in this summary, we focus mainly on the purpose and on specific objectives of the instrument itself. On SoiLEX, there is also a section for topic-based search method. If you are particularly interested in one of this topic, as you may see, there is a dedicated section to soil conservation, soil quality, soil monitoring, or in this case, soil pollution, as you can see. This is what you will find if you click on the soil pollution icon. So the contents are ordered by alphabetical order, of course, and you will find all the legislation and policies that are related specifically to soil pollution in this case. We have both national regulations and international regulation, but for today, we will focus mainly on national regulation, of course. On SoiLEX, you can also find links to important publications related to standards and soil protection. For example, the revised soil charter, the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management, the International Code of Conduct of Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizer, and last but not least, the International Yearbook of Soil Law and Policy. So now that I hope you all have a clear, albeit general picture of what SoiLEX is and how it works, I would like to talk about how we can enrich it together and make it even more useful for all operators dealing with soil and its management. So in this working group, one of the priority is to advocate for a better understanding of national legal instruments on the prevention, monitoring, and or remediation of soil pollution. For doing so, this working group have highlighted two key activities. Today we will focus on the key activity number one. There is to say, in support of SoiLEX, the INSOP members could help to analyze national soil legislation and identify minimum principles for addressing soil pollution in order to draft a global global INSOP database. Could be developed in this way and could be utilized by the countries to learn about the existing legal instruments of soil pollution prevention, monitoring, and or remediation. This is a case study from Ukraine, is what member of the working group, Yuri Dimitruk, that we want to thank for his great contribution, has done with the soil legislation related to his country. I want to go through this activity because it's very important for us, and we would like to ask you to replicate this kind of activity. So he went through all the contents about soil pollution that were on SoiLEX, and he did a great analysis of them. He, as you may see under the paragraph B, he highlighted the outdated documents, so the documents that are not valid anymore. And under the paragraph C, he has highlighted the legislations and the documents that have no direct indication on soil pollution. So they are not so relevant for our analysis. And I want to thank once more Yuri Dimitruk for his great work. In fact, we do inspiration for our activity also from this case study from Ukraine. So thank you, Yuri, again. And so this is here at the GSP, we are preparing this document that those who want to be involved in this activity, and we hope will be many, should complete and send back to us so that we could have an overview of the situation regarding soil pollution regulation in your country. As you may see, drawing inspiration from the case study from Ukraine, the INSOP members could help us to analyze the national soil legislation and also to identify minimum principle for addressing soil pollution in their country. You can see the template is not yet confirmed, but will be confirmed later on in December, and it will be structured as you may see. So we made an example out of the United Arab Emirates. So currently on SoiLEX for soil pollution, there is just one law, the federal law number 24. We want to share this document with all of you, of course. And if you could fill in this questionnaire and send back to us, could be great. It's very easy, as you may see. Wouldn't take much time. It's quite straightforward. We would ask if the document is still valid, so yes or no answer. If the document is relevant to soil pollution, still yes or no answer, so straightforward. If we are missing any legal instruments that you are aware of, and if you want to provide us any additional informations. Another task that we would like to ask you is to provide us with some additional information about the content of SoiLEX regarding your country on soil pollution. So if the document is again still valid, and if there are any new legal instruments and so on. So this is the kind of activity that we would like to ask you. But you will be not alone in this regard, because the Global Soil Partnership National Focal Points will support you. For those of you that are not aware of who are the GSP focal points, they are people who usually work for Ministry of Agriculture, of the Environment, and they are helping us to enhance the communication with the government itself and to boost sustainable soil management practices in the country and other soil degradation activities. So they are like the linkages between the GSP and the national governments. Their support in this regard is very, very important, since they provide us with the official translation, for example, of any legal documents, or the authorization to publish on SoiLEX, because we cannot add any new content on SoiLEX without the authorization of the government itself that is provided us by the GSP national focal points. And this is what we have prepared with Sergius, is a part of a survey that will be ready hopefully in January 2024 and will be shared with all our national focal points. This is for questions specifically regarding with soil pollution, and we try to make them more easy so that we don't want to take much time out of you. So they are quite, again, sorry for being repetitive, straightforward. So are you familiar with any legal instrument for preventing, monitoring, and remediating to soil pollution in your country? Yes or no? If you answered yes, please share an official link to the legal instrument for verification. And do you know if your country has endorsed the use of threshold values for soil contaminants in agricultural soil? And if you answered no to the previous question, would you be interested in receiving assistance from network of experts in developing any legal instrument for soil? So this is what the Global Soil Partnership National Focal Points will find in the questionnaire. And that's all from my side. I was quite brief, Serge. So thank you for your attention.
For this. No, that's grand. Thanks to you. Yes, so I hope that we have some more understanding now about FAOLEX and SoiLEX, on what needs to be done and what can be the role of all of you. So once again, I think you saw a very good homework that was done by our INSOP members from Ukraine, who stepped in and helped us to analyze the SoiLEX issues. What is already there? How is it relevant to soil pollution? Whether it's still valid in the country and in use, and if there's something missing. Team already provided the links to the new legislations and policies that are already in the country implemented, but is not in SoiLEX. So if we can have exactly the same work done already for other countries, that will be a fantastic start for all of us. And with that in mind, I would like to open a floor for a discussion in case you want. Please raise your hand. Now, we already used this morning, we scanned some countries and that already knew members from those countries will participate. For example, you saw the United Arab Emirates there, and SoiLEX only has one relevant, well, if we can say relevant or not, I don't know whether it's relevant or not to soil pollution, but when you have one legislation there, for example. So we want to understand from our members at this stage, whether is it really just one legislation available for that country dealing with either prevention, monitoring, or remediation of soil pollution. And if we're missing something, we need to incorporate that and double check that we're not missing something. Same for Germany, for example. Bernd, they've looked at the SoiLEX. For Germany, we have 5 legislations dealing with soil pollution for Germany in German language. Of course, I'm not the expert in German, unfortunately, but whether if the member, if Bernd can help us to understand whether, yes, this is relevant and we keep it in SoiLEX or not, and other countries as well. For example, I looked at Lesotho. There's nothing for Lesotho available, so we need to have a confirmation whether this is the real case or not. Then reach out to the government of Lesotho, for example, and ask whether this is a priority for you. And if they will say yes, then all of us can integrate and develop a plan of what needs to be done. Ravi, Claudia, Day, do you have any comments on what you've heard today? Maybe we can start a discussion about this briefly, and reflections. Claudia?
Yeah, I think that we have a great opportunity here to contribute to a global unification, a front actually of people that are interested in soil pollution and soil health. And this is a unique opportunity that we have to contribute to help driving discussion and legislation for protection of soil in our country. So I will be very happy to see volunteers coming here from this group, with enthusiasm and will to collaborate with us to move forward with it. And with that, I would also like to invite you all to collaborate with the discussion now. Just raise your hands and we are going to, or unmute yourself, and we are going to let you into the discussion.
Thank you. Day, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to comment something on this?
Yeah, I want to express my gratitude to Andres and Giacomo for their detailed explanation of FAOLEX and SoiLEX. I do have one question. I just had a quick look with the link. I had a look at the input for China, and I noticed that the most recent national law is in the database, which is very good. But in China, there are quite a few regulations published by the Ministry of Ecology and the Environment. I remember when Andreas talking about FAOLEX, you mentioned that right now it doesn't include policy. So I wonder, does the legal instrument in FAOLEX or SoiLEX only include like laws passed by the Congress, or it could also include like regulations passed by or established by the ministry?
Thank you, Dave. This is a question for me, right?
Yes.
Yes. No, we do include policies. We have a big collection of policies. We do. Again, I wasn't, in some respects, I wasn't so much aware of the mechanisms that are involved in updating SoiLEX. So it seems you really have a strong, let's say, bottom-up approach of getting to the focal points in each country and having a strong validation process from governments. In FAOLEX, we have none of that. We scour, we go through official database sites, and we just put in there what we consider relevant. So I I understand that, for example, then when I was talking about integrate data exchange, automated data exchange from FAOLEX to SoiLEX, it might not work because I understand what is put in SoiLEX. It is very curated and validated and all that. So yeah, I'm sorry, perhaps I went overboard in my enthusiasm of trying to bring the two data sets together, but I find absolutely fantastic the work done by the Ukrainian national focal point, and I hope that SoiLEX colleagues will pass along this information to us so that we can also make sure that the data is correct in FAOLEX. Because as I said, at the moment, the two data sets are not linked systematic. There's no system links between them. So they're separate databases manually entered separately. One thing to mention, in FAOLEX, we take a lot of care in linking documents. So if we have a national law and then regulations that are done under that law, we create the links so that the user can move around from the law to the regulations and backwards. We have repealing status, so we can see when things are repealed and new documents emerge. So I hope that some of the gaps that our Ukrainian colleagues, sorry, I don't remember the name, found in SoiLEX, that they're not all cascading into FAOLEX, and that perhaps our data is more updated just because we have a much more streamlined approach of entering data. We don't go through governments, we don't go through anything other than official sites or other sites, projects, etc. We just need to make sure that they are enacted or adopted, and then we just put them in. Thank you. I hope I answered your question, Nate.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andres. Yes, quite interesting. And also, Andres, the Ukrainian colleague, Yuri, wasn't even a focal point. It was just an ordinary INSOP member who decided to help us in this. So that's this kind of the opportunity that we see with the ordinary INSOP members that are here, 75 of them, and even more can help us to integrate what is in the SoiLEX, what is missing, etc. Bernd, for example, hello Bernd, I see you're here. Happy to see you joining us from Germany. Bernd, I also see that you wanted to present something. Unfortunately, because of time constraint, we can't. Do you have some specific points regarding Germany about soil pollution legislations and legal instruments available right now? I would really appreciate if we can liaise with you in separate meetings so I can give you an overview of what is in SoiLEX for Germany, and you can scan and help me to translate whether this is really relevant or we're missing something very important. Bert, do you have any comments?
Yes, comments so far. Hello to everyone. My comment is so far that Germany has a soil legislation. Basically, we do have an act, a soil law, and we do have an ordinance for practical execution. And this is in force since 23 or more years. And we had an amendment of the ordinance August this year, is in force since August this year. And so after a while of discussions and practical and experience in the last 20 years, also discussion with the European Union and several tries to have a European soil legislation. Now there started a discussion in Germany, very general, but I think also a very effective one, to amend the whole soil legislation. So far, it will go into some, so the basic main experience was, first, the legislation cannot go into force really, so it needs a strengthening of the legislation. We have many interrelations and overcrossing with other legislation, let's say correlation, interaction between soil and waste, soil and construction waste, soil and agriculture, soil and forestry, and this has not been tackled so far that it works fine in practice. Now all these aspects, so these interactions with other fields will be discussed and more will be amended and strengthened. And finally, monitoring. There we have a whole bunch of monitoring and mapping systems in Germany, since we have 16 different states in Germany, so regional states, and everyone does it on its own, more or less. There is no real harmonization and no fixed data exchange, no harmonized sampling, and so on and so on. And the data are not publicly available. And even the authorities are not authorized to take the data on private land. So this is all these issues are under discussion, and we will see what the future will tell us.
Great. Thank you very much, Bernd, for this great information. I see some hands here, one from our colleague Edwin. Good afternoon, Edwin. Happy to see you online from Wageningen University. Oh, Edwin, we can't hear you even though your microphone is unmuted. Okay, Edwin, once you try to keep your microphone fixed, we can go to our another hand here, Bayan. Good afternoon, Bayan. Bayan is joining us from United Arab Emirates. Bayan,
Hi,
happy to see you in this meeting. Would you like to share some information about your country and the soil pollution instrumental tools that are available there?
Sure, Sergio. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this very important topic and discussion. And I think stopping soil contamination is absolutely important for preventing land degradation. However, let's say, contamination should happen. So it's important to know how to handle it in a proper way and how to carefully assessing the situation and take the right steps to fix it. So concerning Abu Dhabi Emirates and the significant actions taken in this regard, actually the first step taken was to develop a set of guidelines on which we can benchmark our actions and assessments. So this led to the development of the soil contamination user guide. This is this document here. So actually this guide gave us the knowledge to produce a standardized assessment with a clear procedure. So the user guide clearly outlined the requirements for each stage of assessing contaminated sites, starting from preliminary site assessment, progressing through detailed site assessment, followed by site management, and concluding with remediation, management, validation, and monitoring. Additionally, actually, this user guide contains soil contamination guidelines for 3 land uses: industrial, residential, and agriculture. And these values are used to compare all laboratory results, let's say, against, let's say, to define, to identify which values are exceeded and which parameters are subsequently considered as contamination. Moreover, as I think most of you already know, that we have well-established soil quality monitoring program, and I believe one of the important tools is also the implementation of periodic monitoring programs significantly aids our understanding for soil characteristics here in the UAE, and let's say uncovers the reason behind elevated concentration of specific elements, if found, whether arising from natural or anthropogenic causes. I think also very important tool, in my opinion, is the development of soil environmental database, which let's say tracks all generated records and maps. And presently we have a very well-established database, and we have more than 75,000 records. In addition to the laws that you were presenting, the federal law number 24, also we have another law, which is the establishment of the environmental agency law. And this law actually also includes several clauses addressing the need to regulate the impact of using, let's say, chemicals, hazardous substances, pesticides, fertilizers, and also to establish the pollution control, or let's say enforce the pollution control and the preservation of soil health. And I don't know if you have more time, but recently we have also released list of financial penalties for environmental pollution. And the fines are determined by, let's say, factors such as severity and type of pollution and the reoccurrence of these incidents. So this is in general, and I believe most of these information are already published in our website. I will be more than happy to share the link to our website, and we keep, let's say, updating these tools in a frequent way. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Bayan. Yeah, that's very important that you mentioned we have another law in the country addressing the issues of soil pollution, which is not captured in SoiLEX. And that's exactly what we want to do, to understand that we capture everything related to soil pollution at the first instance in SoiLEX. So I would appreciate if you could help us to collect all this missing information from SoiLEX that are relevant to soil pollution at the later stage. Thank you. Edwin, let's try from your side. Hello.
Yeah. Is it working now?
Yes, it is working. Hello.
Super. Thanks so much, everyone, for super interesting presentation and all this fantastic work. Really a pleasure to see more and hear more about the background. Just wondering a little bit coming from a law background, the law in the book is always just part of the picture, and how it is applied and how it is interpreted by courts can be very different story. And I was just wondering if it might also make sense to supplement the SoiLEX with, or the FAOLEX, but focusing on the SoiLEX with something like country reports, where really there's more of a background on actually how it is applied, how things are evolving, how courts are interpreting the obligations that arise, for instance, because otherwise you have just part of the picture and not always how it is in practice as much.
Thank you. Thank you, Edwin. I'm super happy to see you, and thank you for your question. I think you raised a very good point.
Maybe Andres want to contribute to it. Andres,
yes, sure.
or Giacomo, yeah?
Yeah, can you hear me? Ah, okay, sorry. And I was saying that Edwin raised a very, very good point. One of the main aims of SoiLEX is to also exchange information. We know that in all environmental issue, but specifically when we are dealing to soil, there is no one size solutions for fits all. I could say, So we have to keep it in mind when we are relating to environmental issues, of course. And I mean, coming from legal perspective, we have to know that a different legal system has different laws and different ways to implement its own legislation, and also different ways to put those legislation into practice and how to implement it. And this is one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we are dealing with environmental issue. And so on this regard, I think that we can approach SoiLEX more in a way that, that can enrich our background, our information, our data on soils and how different states relate to the same issue, so that maybe the different states can pick what elements are good for their legal system and avoid the others. And yes, I think that is mainly a thing of is really a matter that is very related to the country. So yes, I think that we can relate under this regard just as a exchange database. I don't know if I answered proper your question, but thank you again.
If I may give my 2 cents.
Sure, please go ahead. Yep, to
okay.
Wrap up.
I am not sure I understood the question from Edwin, but if I understood correctly, that is one of the main preoccupations of the Development Law Service. That's we have a lot of laws on paper that have been enacted, but what's the impact? What are the effects? without having that information, it's hard then to go to, policymakers and telling them, you should reform your laws in such a way, without having some proof of the effects, the positive effects that these laws or regulations have done. So that is something we're looking at from the perspective of regulatory impact assessment, and in terms of FAOLEX, it goes way beyond our scope. We already have our hands full just trying to make sure that the collection of laws that we have is updated and don't get too many of the errors or omissions that Yuri has pointed out.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So to wrap up and close this subject, because we have to move. Edwin, did that answer your question or not really? Let's be clear.
I'll keep it very short. So the effectiveness question that was hinted at the last answer, definitely super important, but super challenging. What I meant more is that a lot of laws are quite general or abstract. It could be, for instance, soil pollution is no longer allowed, but then that's it. And then in court cases and jurisprudence, these rules are usually further interpreted, further elaborated by courts, by judges, and then you get a much better idea of what do these laws actually mean. And then it could sometimes be helpful to have like this background or a country report that really goes into more of these details of the law, because now you have the laws, which is super helpful, but it only gives a very limited picture of what the law actually is, how it is interpreted by courts, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay. Last hand, and we need to wrap up. Arkady, good afternoon. Very happy to see you joining us from Ukraine. Let's be short and clear. And in your question or your comment, do you have any comments or questions to address?
I have a short comment from our Ukraine colleagues. I want to say that EU legislation, that we have a big problem for harmonization of Ukrainian and EU soil legislation. Now we have the general common feature of the soil legislation of EU and Ukraine at the moment and this main feature is the absence of targeted sectoral law of soil protection. Nowadays in EU, only 2 countries, Germany and Bulgaria, have special laws of soil protection, and there is currently no corresponding EU regulatory act. Separate requirements of soil protection, both in EU and in Ukraine, are scattered in dozens of legal acts of different levels: constitution, laws, codes, strategies, action plans, directives, orders, and etc. In particular, the Ukrainian part of global database of soil legislation, SoiLEX, if you listen, include more than 60 normative legal acts devoted to various aspects of land and soil protection in Ukraine. But the question about soil pollution in Ukraine is affected in one way or another by 19 normative legal acts, such as one code, 10 laws of Ukraine, 6 decrees, 1 strategy, and 1 order. But in nowadays after war condition, we have a very hard situation with Ukrainian soils. And we know we want to do the following steps to improve the legislation of Ukraine on soil protection. The first of all, we propose to develop and implement the specialist law of Ukraine on soil protection in accordance with the new EU law of soil health, in other words, soil monitoring law. Then we need to determine the national key indicators of soil health, harmonized with indicators of soil health in EU. We need to introduce these indicators in the state statistical reporting and create a state system of national monitoring of soil health. And the last step, maybe one of the most important, is the creation in Ukraine of the National Register of Contaminated and Degraded Soils affected by military aggression of Russian Federation, as recommended the new EU laws of soil health.
Arkady, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's not go into political situation, but we understand your concerns, and you're not the only one who have this such a problem. Same problems to exist in other countries, so that's why we need to work at the global level together and share the information easily and in a flowing manner. Okay, just to wrap up, I know we can continue on for many hours on this day. Since you're leading this working group, the primary activity is to collect the information from as many countries as possible on the soil pollution legislations, policies, laws, you name them, that are in the SoiLEX and that's absent from the SoiLEX. Let's endorse and agree. Do we want to start this activity on a short-term goal and mobilize our members who are here and who couldn't join today and collect the information from their countries as a first instance and mobilize focal points who are working for the Ministry of Agriculture? Your final words.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should use our resource among the membership first. I mean, Giacomo was sending out the survey. I mean, we could use feedback from the survey and to get a gauge of the interest. I think what the Ukraine colleagues have done was fantastic. I think that this bottom-up approach is good starting point. And if we have missing any country that's missing, then we can probably use help from the focal point.
Great. Okay. So Claudia, agreed? So then the steering committee of INSOP will now, as Giacomo presented, work and finalize the template that we will disseminate to all of you for the collection of information from your specific country. Now, of course, we just showed you the draft version that we quickly drafted, but this needs to be worked in a clear manner. And yeah, I think we can complete that in a short time, within half a year or so, or even quicker than that. Okay, great. Well, before we're gonna jump to INSOP Fair and talk about fertilizers, let me quickly make an announcement that will attract your attention. I'm sure it will, because as Claudia mentioned, the importance is to understand what is available in terms of the regulations. Oops, where is my screen? Okay. Do you see my screen in full mode? Can someone nod the head? Okay, yes, you can. So basically, we have this idea to launch a series of webinars where members or people from the ministries, from the government who actually made those regulations or legal instruments and wrote them can help us, the general public who are not lawyers, to understand in a very simple manner what is there. Because if I go to many regulations and start reading them, even though it's in English, I can't understand most of the language because it's getting very complicated. So I think it will be a good opportunity for us to launch a series of webinars starting from January next year, aiming to explain soil pollution legal instruments from different countries in a simple and understandable language. If I will go, for example, to FAOLEX, right? And if I put soil pollution as one of the filter words, I will only have 38 results as of today from different countries. We have 15 countries where we have a clear title in the regulation of soil pollution available. Well, I mean, China, for example, they have 5 regulations or laws available in FAOLEX out of those 38, which is why you have only 15 countries here in the slide. So we're going to reach out, first of all, to those countries that you can see here. For example, for Serbia, right, they have a soil pollution testing program that was published back in 2019. and it was developed and written by the Ministry of Agriculture, who acts actually our focal point at the GSP. So we would like to invite him or her, I can't remember whether it was male or female, invite them to present in 40 minutes presentation what is actually written in that law, in that regulation, and so that we can all understand in a very simple language. The frequency of that one will be once a month, right? So we have the template for the registration. Actually, if you already, some of you have 70 people here, if some of you already developed and was involved in developing and publishing regulation or legislation, you can simply reach out to us and express the interest to present your regulation from your country in an understandable language so that we can all have a clear indication of what's written there. Well, that's basically a quick announcement of what will be the plan for next year. Andres, you have a hand raised. Please go ahead.
And I'm sorry I know you have to move on.
No, go ahead.
Just because you mentioned FAOLEX, the 38 documents.
That's right.
My feeling is that the terms you use is soil collection in the title, right? Now, what we have in FAOLEX is actually 3 languages. So for countries that are in English, the metadata is in English, and for countries that are not French, Spanish, and English, they will also be in English. But for Spanish countries, the title will be in Spanish, and for French, it will be in French. So you probably only captured a portion of the legislation that we have on soil pollution. But there are other ways to do it, better ways, because perhaps titles, inside of soil pollution, they talk about, I don't know, soil conservation in the title. So we have what I was talking about before, the main classifying keyword that if used properly will give you a good set of documents that are directly linked to soil pollution. Okay, thank you. And yeah, if I can take the opportunity just to thank you for inviting me. It's been great, and it's wonderful to see such a robust network going on. And we hope to get all the data that the SoiLEX captures, that you pass it along to us. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's a very good information.
I agree with you with you need to organize the queries that you're going to do and your keywords. So I think that the work is not going to be that simple. So, but I think that we have a great team here. We have more than 100 countries in our membership. So people from different languages, so they can help us to fulfill this task. So I'm quite happy and confident that this is going to go through. So Sergius?
No, that really explains why I don't have any single regulation from South America. That was a very good life hack that you just gave us. Giacomo, we need to revise FAOLEX in Spanish language and other UN languages. Thank you very much, Andres, for this information. Okay, let's move on to the second topic. Vanessa from INSOL Fair will address why it's important to continue talking about pollution caused by fertilizers and what heavy metals are a real concern when you deal with fertilizers. This task was already been mentioned many times during our joint INFA, well, it was formerly INFA, now it's INSOL Fair, INSOP meetings this year and last year. And I think we need to start move on and drive the wheels to achieve something on this task, because otherwise it will be just in theory. Vanessa, good morning from Mexico. I'm very happy, and I do apologize for waking you so early, but appreciate it that you joined us and that you can brief us about heavy metals and fertilizers and what can we do in achieving the task. Over to you.
Yes, Sergius, thank you for inviting me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am sure I'm not the only one that is waking up early today. So thank you for the invitation, Sergius. So let me share my screen. So thanks a lot. Please allow me to introduce myself a little bit. My name is, as my colleague Sergio said, Vinisa Sainz Santillan, and I am co-coordinating the International Network on Soil Fertility and Fertilizers, INSOP. That is one of the technical networks of the Global Soil Partnership Secretariat. So as my colleague Sergio already explained to you, I am sure many of you attended the meetings, joint meetings that we have been celebrating this year, one in March and one in June. So together, INSOP and INSOP, formerly INFA, I don't want to create any confusion, INFA has merged INSOP. So we have had meetings in the past, mainly to start planning how we would address this subject. So very general, the INSOP and infra priorities in both networks is to the knowledge dissemination on environmental and human health impacts of poor quality fertilizers. So the key activities are the harmonization, proposed at least and endorsed in those two meetings, are the harmonization of the SOPs, the standard operating protocols, for the analytical evaluation of heavy metal content in phosphate fertilizers. Also identify and advocate for the involvement of institutions and laboratories to support the analysis of heavy metals present in fertilizers. Also understand the distribution of heavy metals in fertilizers globally, highlight the fertilizer pollution to affected countries and propose solutions, strengthen current legislation on fertilizer packaging, and capacity building to train farmers and technicians on fertilizer misuse and overuse. So these are the overall goals, but as my colleague Sergio said, and after hearing the very good presentations and informative presentations today of my colleagues that preceded me, I have very clear that we have ahead of us a very monster impressive mission by addressing these subjects, and specifically in the case of heavy metals. However, we have started, and my colleague Sergio and I have some ideas on how we can start to address these subjects specifically with small but solid actions starting next year. So I'm sure you know this, the INSOP monitoring working group priority that my colleague Sergio shared with me. So the priority is, in partnership with INSOP, spread awareness first, and also second, identify the countries that are willing to monitor the concentration of heavy metals on fertilizer labels. So before I continue, I want to provide you a little bit of information of what INSOP is now. So INSOP is a very was recently launched this year. And as a matter of fact, we are having also our working group meetings yesterday, on Monday, yesterday, and today is the last working group meeting. So we have 3 working groups. The first one is soil fertility and nutrient monitoring systems. Working group 2 is sustainable soil fertility and fertilizer management. But then working group 3 is what used to be the International Network on Soil Fertility, on Fertilizer Analysis, and that has merged in INSOP. So working group 3 is about fertilizer safety and quality assessment. So the working group of INSOP that will be directly linked with INSOP is working group 3. So here you have the many different goals that we have in INSOP. But as you can see, the goal that is of relevance for this meeting and for the network is the evaluation and improvement of the safety and quality of fertilizers. This is a very wide topic because there are many ways to evaluate the safety and the quality of fertilizers. But certainly today we are going to be addressing more the topic of the hazardous materials that could be present mainly in inorganic fertilizers, and specifically phosphate fertilizers, and the amount and the presence or the content of cadmium. So talking about the priorities of the working group 3, we have several, but here you have them summarized. So we are addressing regulations and policies for fertilizer quality and safety. And certainly we are going to include now for next year the heavy metals regulations and policies. So I think that we can join efforts INSOP and INSOFER and try to understand which are the regulations and the policies in the different countries of the members of both networks. So we are also next year going to develop guidelines for quality standards. In this case, we are working on NPK, the content of nutrients, I mean nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in inorganic and organic fertilizers. But then certainly we will include heavy metals in our work plan. Then it's also important to us the information of import and export legislation, which we started to compile and put in a database. This is important because next year we are going to launch our first proficiency test exercise. So that means that we will have fertilizer samples for different laboratories, the laboratories that want to participate, and they will these laboratories will analyze the content of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in these fertilizers, and then they will give us the results. So we will be able to see the performance of the different laboratories, and we will have an idea of how they are performing in terms of quality. And since we are doing this effort, this is something that I need to discuss with the network actually in an hour, in half an hour. But I think if we are going to do this effort to launch the proficiency test and analyze NPK, we could actually include heavy metals next year, also because we are in a good position to do this. I understand this is not so much a relevant information for this working group, but these are like the priorities that we have in SoiLEX. But for sure, we will address the subject. We will start addressing the subject of regulations and policies when we talk about heavy metals. So why is it important to monitor heavy metals in fertilizers? It is very clear that not all fertilizers have a high concentration of heavy metals, that this is restricted to sedimentary rock origin heavy metals, fertilizers. But we have discussed this a lot in the previous meetings, but I still want to highlight that to maintain the productivity of farms, phosphate fertilizers will continue be using. So we have potential threats to contamination with heavy metals, cadmium, copper, and even uranium. During the last meeting of INSOFER and INSOP, we had a very interesting presentation about this. So the levels in these heavy metals need to be carefully monitored and managed. So if high levels of heavy metals are detected in some soils, so we are taking also actions together, INSOP and INSOFER, to determine this. It may prevent that the affected land being used for certain farm activities. So the problem with fertilizers is that the mining of phosphorus, specifically sedimentary rocks, are used to produce fertilizers, the majority of fertilizers that are available commercially. Then we purchase, or farmers purchase, these phosphorus fertilizers that are added to soils, and finally they spread in the whole food chain and affecting soils, animals, and humans, causing all the very severe health problems that we are all aware of. But back to the topic, which is the governance, the laws and regulatory frameworks. The first action that we want to implement is to identify the countries with monitoring system in place. So my colleague Sergius found that there are some countries where a lot of progress has been made in this regard. So that is the case of New Zealand. So they even have this code of practice for fertilizer nutrient management, and they have established a limit for cadmium content in fertilizers, which is 280 milligrams of cadmium per kilogram. And they have even a specific cadmium management strategy to manage this problem in New Zealand. And it is a very good example on how it provides a basis for government agencies, but it is also an example on how to start working on this. And if we work together, perhaps we can have certainly some inspiration and some examples on how to make progress toward the legislation of the cadmium content in organic fertilizers. So another example of this legislation that progress is the countries with monitoring system in place in the European Union. So the cadmium limit in phosphate fertilizers has been introduced, and it is 60 milligrams per kilogram. So they have an even more interesting initiative. The co-legislators have agreed in the establishment of a voluntary low cadmium level, which I think it's a very good idea. So this label will be granted to those fertilizer products that have less than 20 milligrams per kilogram, and they will have this low cadmium content. So this is huge progress, and this label, I think it's like the biggest accomplishment that we could do in terms of managing this cadmium content in fertilizers. So of course, these are examples. So I am sure that INSOP members and INSOLFER members, which I will talk about this in the meeting of Working Group 3 that is taking place today, we can find countries and members that are willing to participate. We know, because of all the background that we have been hearing in the presentations, we know that this is challenging, because we might not be aware of all the regulations that exist in our countries, but we need to start. So we need the participation of the countries and the members of INSOLFER and also from INSOP. So Sergius, if you agree, I would like to open discussion after I finish the presentation. So we can go ahead now. So we have some specific actions that we would like to implement. So the first one is identify the countries that have already limits for heavy metal in fertilizers. So for this, we can start in many different ways. We will lead the initiative of having a search in the literature, and also now that I have heard the presentation of Dr. Bater, then I have a more a clear vision, but it's also scary because it's a huge tool that we could be using. So it seems we have a lot to do in this aspect to identify the countries with limits for heavy metals in fertilizers. Then the second is the countries with knowledge transfer, from between INSOP and INSOLFER. So we need to, of course, to collaborate. Then we need to identify the countries of concern willing to develop limits for fertilizer metals in for limits of heavy metals in fertilizers. So which countries are really willing to develop these limits and to make progress in this matter? And then we also need to develop a roadmap and inform the countries on what could be done to adopt these limits, and then partnered with fertilizer industry, supporting them to recognize the social responsibility that they have to contribute to this problem and how they contribute to improve food and fertilizer quality. So in the short term, these are the actions that are proposed. So first, to identify the countries with limits for heavy metal in fertilizers. So for doing that, we will have we were thinking on launching a survey, but I think it's more practical and easier for you just to fill a spreadsheet, a template in Excel. So if you agree, and we will open the discussion, but this is the first action. You would all receive this spreadsheet, and if you want to participate, you can fill it out and share with the content with me and Sergius, and start identifying the countries that have these limits. Then we need to identify the countries of concern. So this will be done in this spreadsheet. And the third action is to gather and publish permissible limits in the different countries. So let me explain a little bit better. I think with these three actions can be established or can be done together simultaneously, I mean, next year. So on one side, we would like to understand the information that you have of your own country, but on the other side, there is a lot that has already been published, and we have a lot of information in FAOLEX also. So we need to gather all this information, and the first product that we could have is to publish the permissible limits in the different countries once we gather all this information. And just a quick reminder that both networks are already working in the SOP development as a first step in addressing fertilizer pollution. So there is already one almost finished draft and ready for publication, but we still need to go with one last review of the SOP. And also empowering legislation aspects in monitoring heavy metals in fertilizers is the next step that we commit in SoilFair to work on this next year in collaboration, in close collaboration with INSOP members. So thank you, Sergius. I think, we can have an open discussion about this. I would like to hear your opinion, if you would be willing to participate in this initiative, and we would like to hear if you are interested and gather the information, and then you would be receiving the spreadsheet soon. I guess I cannot say the date, but I need to work this with my colleague Sergius.
Yeah, so we would like to thank Finissa for her presentation here within our work group, and reassure the collaboration between the Soil Pollution Monitoring and Regulation Work Group together with the INSOP concerning the actions, the priority actions that they developed, which are very similar to the ones we already have to do as our work group. And that is something that we can synergize for sure and contribute with each other in order to facilitate the work and not doing double work, you know. So perhaps we can have a meeting schedule a meeting to organize the framework for our request for the members, together with the requests that you have also, and then we have one framework only that will assist everybody, because we are both looking for legislation, so then it's going to be like a great shortcut already. Concerning the laboratories that you're talking about, having them analyzing the samples is kind of a ring test, or is it just to see concentrations from that country? Because these are two different approaches. If you have a ring test, you have samples from some countries shared with different countries just to establish SOPs and protocols. Or you can have each country analyzing their own sample just to see and identify, without a unified SOP, the concentration of heavy metals on them. So this is one question I have for you. I see hands. I still need to, when Vinisa finishes answering this question, I will take back, make some comments again, and then pass the hands, and then give attention to the hands, okay? So Vinisa, please.
Thank you, Dr. De Lima, for your question. It is definitely the first one. It is a global ring test, that the one that we are planning to launch, so with the laboratories that want to participate. But then regulations come again in the matter. So the restriction or the difficult part to participate in this ring test is exactly regulations, customs procedures. But I am sure we can make it, because we have very good successful cases in the Global Soil Laboratory Network. They have done and launched this ring test in the past, even with soils, and that is more difficult, I assume, than importing and exporting fertilizer samples. So the plan is to import and export samples, standard fertilizer samples, and then the countries analyze the content of the NPK content. And I am planning in my head heavy metals. Why not, if we already have a harmonized SOP protocol?
That's interesting. That's something that the Glosolan and also the assessment group can also help. Concerning the countries that already have legislation in place, so I know my country, Brazil, we have 2 CONAMAs, and one of the CONAMAs that we have assess the concentration of heavy metals, especially because it is taken from a region that where the background of cadmium is completely different from the rest of the country. So it's a high background level. So I already have the legislation. I will send it to you, so you can already have a look. I also know that, and we would like to bring Ravi back, because we know that in Australia we have a good legislation dealing with it. So if Ravi could put some words on that, it would be interesting also. And then I'll go to the hands. Thank you.
Dr. De Lima, I am really sorry.
No, it's okay. I just want to be very clear that we have only just 6 minutes left. So for those 2 hands that we have, Carolina and Tapan, just be clear and precise with your question or comment, because we need to finish in 6 minutes. Carolina, over to you, please.
Actually need to connect, because I need to open the meeting, Serge, but...
Okay, don't worry.
Yes, thank you, Vinisa, for the presentation. I will try to ask very shortly. some explanations. I would like to know, when you are talking about heavy metals regulations in fertilizers, what do you mean? You mean in chemical fertilizers, or also include organic fertilizers and organic mineral fertilizers? One question, and the second, my question is about forms of heavy metals, because what we have now in our country, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I am from Lithuania and Lithuania Research Center for Agriculture and Forestry. And what we have now, it is that we always regulate total amounts of the heavy metals. But now I see that maybe it's more important to determine and to regulate plant bioavailable heavy metals amount, which are more hazard and so on. So this is my questions.
I can quickly answer your question, Karina Achalabay, for this question. So basically, we're going to target at this stage just mineral fertilizers, focusing on phosphate fertilizers, because this is an issue. Organics one will be at the later stage once we deal with the minerals. Okay. So step by step. Bioavailability of heavy metals is also a huge concern, so that needs to be also addressed. So that's what we're going to focus with the assessment working group as well, also in fertilizers. So that's, I think I was quite short in your answers, in your questions. So
okay, yeah. Thank you.
Tapan, last question to conclude. Thank you.
I'm from India. We have done work on the policy document for fertilizers in the country. Although I am not dealing with the heavy metals, our aim was for the reactive nitrogen. This document has already been published, around 306 policies collected from the government websites. With the link has been provided. I think I can provide the link of the published document so that this can be followed up. And probably we can also take care of, mostly from the nutritional aspect, nutrient aspect of reactive nitrogen, from the air, soil and water pollution aspect we have dealt with. So that is about talking about the policy. Probably we can mine it further to check out the heavy metal pollution aspect.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comment. Tapal, I'm looking forward to receive the links for those publications and policies that you have.
Sure.
To integrate them into this concern. Okay, thank you very much. Ravi, I know it's quite late for you. We've seen just a quick one in a short. We've seen New Zealand. Quick question, do we have something similar for Australia in controlling heavy metals and fertilizers, if you're aware of them? Ravi, the microphone is not working.
Thanks very much,
yes.
First and foremost, Australia does have an excellent legislation, National Environment Protection Measure, that focuses on assessment of contaminated sites, which is something that we have in place for conventional contaminants. For recently emerged contaminants, we do have new legislation. An example is PFAS, for instance. And indeed, for fertilizer, phosphate as well, we do have a legislation which is fairly similar to New Zealand. And of course, New Zealand and Australia, even our National Environment Protection Measure is fairly similar, cuts across. And the recently emerged contaminants, we have a joint legislation. So Australia and New Zealand, we work closely. And I'd be happy to provide the link for the legislation that we have as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ravi, for those comments. Well, I think that we need to continue this discussion in a separate meeting because it's really worrisome. We also need to identify which heavy metals for which country in fertilizers is a real concern. So I think we're just going to organize a separate meeting early next year with INSOP to continue discussion, because I'm not going to go in a rush and close this topic and that's it. Dave, over to you. I think we need to conclude this meeting. I think we achieved some of the objectives that we were looking for in this meeting. So would you like to wrap up in 2-3 minutes about what we heard, and what are your reflections on this?
Yes. So first I want to thank all the presenters, Andres, Giacomo, and Vanessa, for their excellent presentation. Very informative. And I also think, the participants had provided a lot of information and expressed a lot of interest in the discussion. This is extremely helpful. I mean, it tells us that the monitoring work with the support of our members can do a successful job in achieving our goals. And today we discussed two major items. One is about the legal instrument, how to complete probably use the FAOLEX or SoiLEX as a platform to collect the national legislations. I think this will involve a lot of work. I mean, this is more cumbersome than the threshold values that we are currently collecting for the assessment working group. So for this working group, we do need a lot of voluntary work from our members from various countries. My hope is that when we send out the survey, our members can actively participate in, I mean, show your interest, and then we will ask for your help to do the assessment of the existing document in the database and then update the database as necessary. That would be extremely helpful, and I think that also has far-reaching impact in the future. For the collaboration with INSOP, I think that's very important. And I just noticed that I compared the threshold with China, because in China there are thresholds for fertilizers. For cadmium, the threshold is 10 for inorganic fertilizer, and it's 3 milligram per kilogram for organic fertilizer. So for organic fertilizer, it should be more stringent. The reason is, I mean, we are applying it at higher quantity or higher dosage. So it seems to me, what we found in China was that, I mean, the heavy metal pollution of agricultural soil was really important, and fertilizer was an important contributor. So I think to promote this work in the global horizon, I think that's very important for ensuring food safety for our human species, the general population. So I'm very glad that we have this opportunity to work together with INSOP to promote the labeling and probably the pretending standards on the heavy metal in fertilizer. And with that, I want to say again, many thanks to everybody, and I look forward to working together with all of you in the future on this working group. Thank you. And with that, Serge, can we say we can conclude the meeting today?
Of course, we're all looking forward. Need to run to another meeting as well, and I hope we all have other different affairs to work on. Yeah, so basically to wrap up and to catch up what will be next. Next one, our steering committee will finalize the template for the collection of information about different legal instruments in individual country. And that's something that we can do very shortly and reach out to you. And we're looking forward to your help and contribution from your countries. And secondly, I think we will start initiation and planning for a second meeting with INSOIL FAIR to address pollution by heavy metals and fertilizers, to go in much more deeper, because we just started touching the tip of the iceberg, but that's not enough. We just had 10 minutes of discussion. I think we need to have 2 hours of that. Claudia, Ravi, Day, and all of you colleagues, thank you very much for this wonderful meeting. Let's continue working hard, and I wish you all a very successful continuation of the day, and I'll hopefully see you in the next meeting, December 13, our remediation working group, where we'll address sustainable management practices and what we need to do with that, where Ravi will take the lead on that as a leader of the entire working group. Thank you very much, and wish you a very good continuation of the day and good evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Sajis, and thanks everybody for joining us. Bye-bye.